Maybe we should talk about the plan a little bit here. Why not? That would be a good place to go, I think, right now. I have a quote for you on that, just to start us off on this. And this very quote is probably one of the most important messages that we could ever give out into the world. And it's simply the plan: humanity needs to know it exists. Okay, as it says, the one thing which humanity needs today is the realization that there is a plan which is definitely working out through all world happenings, and that all that has occurred in man's historical past and all that has happened lately is assuredly in line with that plan. Necessarily also, if such a plan exists, it presupposes that those who are responsible for the originating of the plan and for its successful carrying forward. In other words, if there's a plan, there's an originator, and therefore it gets us to this idea that there are greater entities that are in the game. You see? Doesn't that kind of give you some reassurance that with this world as it is, that behind it all is that there's something happening, and that even though it seems like a difficult circumstance, we've got the outer world is in a disarray in some sense. Underlying that seeming chaos is a larger intention that's pushing its way through. It's fantastic, fantastic.
Just a comment that when that happens in your own personal life, and you have a chance to look back at the period that was seemingly chaotic, you can see that actually that chaos needed to happen to restore some sort of new order and new knowing and new moving forward. So if we can know it in our own lives, we can externalize it then.
Right. It's a great comment. Just for the sake of the recording, I'll just repeat that it's the idea here, I'm paraphrasing, but the idea is that often in hindsight, the chaos that we see in our lives or in circumstance takes an understanding of meaning. You understand it after you've been through it in a way that you couldn't possibly while in the beginning, in the throngs of it all. And if that's true for individuals, it also must be true for humanity. We could look back at history and look at the rise and fall of civilizations and the chaos that ensued, but with the power of hindsight, we can actually see what enormous lessons and learning processes actually were facilitated as a result of those crisis points in history. So it's quite right, yeah. In many ways, that's the story of the human journey. That the human journey, it would be lovely if the plan just kind of worked out and everything worked out. But remember, it's talking about the plan through the human kingdom. And the human kingdom is ruled by the fourth ray, because we're the fourth kingdom of nature. And the fourth ray is the ray of harmony through conflict. Harmony through conflict, not harmony and conflict. So it's in this kingdom, and then only in this kingdom, of the seven kingdoms of nature, it's the fourth kingdom that its fundamental nature is to develop its individual thinking, then eventually come to a realization of an internal duality, our soul nature, our higher nature, and our lower nature, and then a struggle to live that higher nature and having to battle with the lower nature to get there. And that's what soul personality fusion ultimately is. And when those are two completely fused parts of us, the lower and the higher, and now completely transformed and fused, that's like the step. That's the front door of enlightenment, right there. So it's in this kingdom where we discover our own duality, and therefore go into a phase of inner conflict between our God self and our animal self, our higher nature and our lower nature. No other kingdom has that. You don't have that in the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom's governed by different ray patterns. The animal kingdom is governed by the third ray and the sixth ray. Plant kingdom is the plant kingdom is governed by the fourth ray, but it doesn't manifest in the nature of conflict. It manifests as beauty, because it's also called the ray of beauty. In the human kingdom, it manifests as harmony through conflict. In the plant kingdom, it's beauty. This is why it is said that humanity evolves through pain and suffering. Yeah, pain and suffering. And the Devas evolved through joy. It's like we got the bad end of that deal, didn't we? Yeah.
One of the words that's used, where we talk about restoring the plant. In other words, that's a rebuilding in many ways. The word restore would indicate a rebuilding.
Right.
Does that indicate that the plant at one stage was complete or almost complete? And our function is to re-engage, in other words, building something from a ruins?
That's a really good question. So his question is, we hear the term to restore the plant on earth. It's, part of the great invocation. And what does that suggest? That it was something that was present and destroyed, and so it's in ruins, and now we're trying to rebuild it? The way I see that is, I see that more in terms of, instead of seeing it as rebuilding the plan, I see it more as re-externalizing the plan. Because think about it, remember I talked about it last night in the talk, that the hierarchy is said to have been in physical manifestation. The hierarchy was the masters walked among us in the ancient past, and the plan was very much an external living principle that was present. And then through the advent of the emergence of the Dark Lodge, as I spoke last night, the hierarchy was forced to pull itself into subjectivity to protect the light, and in a way the plan became less densely expressed and more subjectively realized, internally realized. And so my assumption of this, and I'm not sure I have the right answer, but I'm just taking on from what you're saying, is that the restoration is not a rebuilding as in it's decimated, but more of a rebuilding it into the fabric of the outer world in a more conscious way, but it's always been perfectly evident in the inner world. That's how I see it. Any other points or questions on that?
I just maybe a brief comment relating back to experiences, that I have found from experience that no matter how difficult the situation is, how painful, I distinguish in pain and suffering, that no matter how painful it is, if you go with it, accept the situation, and walk through, no matter how difficult it gets, you can move through that, and you don't get trapped in the cycle of suffering. If you walk away from it, you may cause yourself continuing suffering.
Yeah.
By facing, you see it there, you'd love to get away from it, you'd love to deny it, you'd love to walk 100 miles from it, but you can look back then and see what happened, and how you got through it. You'll always be able to see that. You'll never see it if you don't handle it or if you don't go with it.
That's the only way to transform the shadow in anything, is to engage with it. Engage with it. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And a negative way of looking at the existence of the plans is that it might question free will and raise the possibility of predestination. So can we kind of clarify?
Okay.
But I expect it doesn't. But it's just a question that's coming up.
Actually, it's a very interesting question, isn't it? That to the notion, she's asking, does the notion of the plan suggest that it's all predetermined? And if so, then what happened to human free will? I mean, I'm synthesizing what I think you asked. Is that right? Well, it gets really into the big question of what is free will and what is determinism, actually. But rem- it's a paradox. It's a paradox because from a certain perspective, human beings, as I mentioned last night, we are individualized units of consciousness, that life is individualizing for the first time, and therefore individual free will is incredibly important. But particularly it pertains to personality. Personality. It's this idea that, philosophers have debated this for centuries. Is it predetermined or is it free will? And the esoteric philosophy has a great answer for it. The answer is both. Both. You have free will from the level of your consciousness downward. Whatever level of consciousness you're able to reach and hold, from that point downward, through your system and through your outer life, you have free will. But we have no free will when it comes to where we stand on the path and the greater life that we're a mere cell within. In that case, you have no free will. I mean, because think about it. We're all part of the one life, and let's just call the one, for now, let's just say the one life is the planetary logos, the entity that ensouls the whole planet, and you and I are cells of consciousness within its nature, within its beingness. Okay? Now, here you are in your life, but we're all a cell within this bigger life. Well, I have free will. I can walk over here, I can do this, I can do that, I can make decisions, I can do... But I'm still a cell within a larger entity, and whatever that larger entity is intending or doing, I have no choice in that. I will conform to it. It will happen. It will happen. If it hiccups, I'm going to feel a ripple. So the paradox of it is, we talk about having free will, and it's true in one sense, but if we are cells within another entity, so it's all really one entity, then in another sense, there's only one entity that's doing any willing, and that you and I are just part of its outward intention to manifest its will. All of creation on this globe, the kingdoms of nature, the human kingdom, the life that we see teeming outside, all of that is simply the outpicturing of the thoughts of the planetary logos as it thinks itself into manifestation. And the kingdoms of nature are part of its outward thinking. Just like on a human level, our personality is the result of the soul as it thinks and irradiates itself into form. So it's sort of like, you see the paradox. There is free will from a low perspective, but in another way, we're just the outpictured expression of a greater entity and its will. You just kind of have to hold both of them. It is said that the whole path is about resolution of paradox, and that's one of them. And in a way, at this time in human history, if one of the big principles to adopt is the principle of right relationship, then maybe it's all about getting into right relationship between the part and the whole as well. So, okay. All right, so any questions on that? Anything else you'd like to know about that? Well, now let's talk about the plan from another angle. So, okay, we've got this plan. It is said that the masters are the custodians of the plan. Custodians of the plan. Each ashram, 7 ashrams, each ashram has a piece to play in that. Let me get a graphic just to show you that. Hang on a second here. Just realized that there's one graphic that might help us here. Yeah, that's the one. So remember, these are structures. Each of these is chakras. This, Shambhala, is the name of the crown chakra of the planetary logos. That's the power center for the whole system. The whole hierarchy is the heart chakra for the planetary logos. And humanity is the throat chakra to the planetary logos. But the hierarchy, its role is to express, it holds the plan. Shambhala holds the purpose. Shambhala is where planetary purpose is held, but purpose is static. It just is. Plan is purpose that's in process of that is the dynamic aspects of purpose. It's starting to move into expression, and though this is static, this plan area has a dynamic quality about it. And it's divided into 7 broad categories. Each of these ashrams has a sliver of responsibility to the big plan. Each of them is committed to bringing something very, very sacred into the fabric of human consciousness in order to uplift humanity along some line. And each one of them, pretty much, each one of them has a kind of particular area of humanity that it specializes in. So the first ashram, first ray ashram, has a lot to do with giving insight to first ray disciples, because remember, you as a soul are on one of these rays. You as a soul, there are 7 types of souls, remember, 7 types of souls, and your soul is a member of one of these ashrams, according to the ray. So if you're a first ray soul, you're in the first ray ashram. If you're second ray soul, you're part of the second ray ashram. And when I say you're part of it, I mean it has an influence on you because through energetic affinity, it's a natural flow. We're all actually probationary members of the ashram, because you're not a full member of the ashram until your soul can demonstrate its mastery over the personality completely. When that happens, you're said to have full entrance into the ashram. For you and I, when it comes to the path of discipleship, that's called the being on the threshold of the ashram. It's being in the aura of the ashram, but not full admittance into the ashram. Okay? Because there can be no dissonance in the ashram. That's an interesting concept. No dissonance is permitted into the ashram. Therefore, if there's personality stuff that hasn't been fully transformed, that's dissonance. And so it's not, that's why we're probationary. Nonetheless, most of the work in the world is done by those who are probationary. And so you're part of one of those groups, okay?